I have seen many videos by many different people with this exact same title, and I think it's time that I join them because I agree. It really is that damn phone. It's a classic stereotype that the previous generation that grew up with TV, like, oh man, this phone, it's gonna rot your brain. But then their previous generation who grew up with radio were like, that TV's gonna rot your brain. But then their previous generation who grew up on just books are like, those radio shows, they're gonna rot your brain. And honestly, even further back, when books and the printing press were first invented, I forget who, like one of the ancient philosopher, writer, whatever famous people back then, legitimately like criticized books when we were first inventing mass production of books. They said like this is going to ruin humanity. Why bother learning anything when you can just write it down? There's no reason to remember anything ever anymore. So this was like thousands of years ago that people were already having this mentality of like, there's books, they're gonna ruin everything. um, but the phones do kind of, and the TV as well, and I guess to a degree even radio. Like each of these things are increasingly powerful tools that can be used for both good and bad, right? They can have both good and bad effects, and it's just up to how you use them. Because honestly, I would not be who I am today if it weren't for the internet. It has given me access to so much information and expanded my mind. Uh, I've learned more from the internet than I ever could have imagined learning from school. It's been it really we think about like in science fiction there's where you like connect your brain to the whole internet. We already have that, but the amount of data that can be transferred between our brain and the internet is just limited by how fast it can transfer between our brain and our phone. But other than that, like we are already a hive mind. The whole species is already like an internet hive mind thing. It's just this is where the data transfer is limited. There, that's where the bottleneck is, and it's weird because I had just barely enough childhood to remember what it was like to not be plugged in, and I crave and carve out time intentionally to be unplugged. And don't mind my dog being noisy. Hello, little dude. Can you see him? There he is. Hi. He's a happy boy. Anyways, um, yeah. So it's like, yes, books changed humanity. Radio changed the way that people interact with music. Like it used to be only ever live music, and then we figured out how to record it. And then TV changed entertainment. It changed how the average person would spend their evenings. We, I think, became much more lazy, uh, and then the internet also like it changed everything, everything. And I think it is possible to have all of the the upsides without the downsides. It's like a hammer can build a house or it can murder. Like I think it's very possible to use the hammer only in a responsible manner, right? And same thing for the internet and the TV and the radio, but we need to be aware of how it's affecting us so that we can use it properly. Um, for those who aren't aware, the concept behind all of my videos on this channel are the same way you can press the reset button on a video game. What if you apply that to real life? Like just start over, fresh. Um, and when you take this not just as a thought experiment, but like literally try to live out that experiment, you find immediately you kind of can't. Like obviously I can't just like be born again and be an infant again and start everything over from the very beginning, nor would I want to. But you can, in every moment, act as if it is a new life, and you find immediately that you have prior commitments that must be dealt with, whether it be like I have this body that requires sleep and food and whatever and shelter. I have a job that I get to go to, that I have to go to, but I'm fortunate to have a job that I actually really really enjoy. Um, I shouldn't say fortunate. I worked really hard to, or I took risks to get into a job that I really enjoy, and I have relationships and like connections with people that I would like to maintain and nurture and not just neglect them and let them disappear. So there's like all these old projects that I've started and never finished. A lot of them are worth finishing. A lot of them are not. Upon reconsidering them, you're like, no, this is not worth finishing. This is, I'm glad I dabbled in it, but it's time to let it go, right? But a lot of them are worth finishing and are just waiting for me. Or maybe not waiting so patiently. Maybe they are knocking down my door like, come on, finish this, right? Anyways, the reason I bring this up is not just to like make this video relevant to all of the other videos on my channel, but because one thing that every time I try to live this experiment of hitting the reset button on life that comes up very consistently is phone addiction. That is my biggest addiction. Um, and it's specific aspects of specific websites. It's the feed. It's anything that goes infinite, like the shorts feed, like Facebook, like anything that like goes on forever, with very very entertaining things for very very little effort. There's plenty of other people that talk much more in detail about like exactly the mechanisms of like gambling and how phone addiction actually works in the brain. So I'm not going to dive into all that, but there are those mechanisms that I personally struggle with. And that is something that also, like all those prior commitments, there's something that comes up immediately. These prior addictions that don't go away when you hit the reset button in this experiment, they continue. And so that's why the most important rule for this experiment is to question everything, because that is how you can whittle away and rid yourself of everything that is not beneficial to you and create the space to have this reset button experience, if that makes sense. But among all the different aspects of life that need to be set aside in order to do this reset button experiment, the phone addiction is the one that I personally struggle with the most. And I think it's also deeply connected to disassociation. It's a way of running away from reality. And it's something that I've done long before having a phone, like when I just had a laptop and I was on Facebook all the time, and even before then when I was just playing video games. I think absolutely you can enjoy video games in a healthy way, but I also have spent plenty of time experiencing video games in a, well, they are fundamentally very disassociative. video games and social media and computers and phones, all these forms of tech, TV, to a lesser degree radio, to a lesser degree books, all of them take you out of the physical experience and into the mind. When you're reading a really good book and you are absorbed in the story, you're not paying attention to anything around you. The feeling of the wind on your skin, or the temperature of the air, or the smell of the flowers, or maybe the stale cabin, or whatever. You're not paying attention to any of that. You're absorbed in the story. And same thing with radio. You can get lost in the music. TV, you can get, TV, movies, computers. It's just increasing intensity of disassociative. And I really like this quote from Gary Vee. He talks about how the internet and all these technologies have not changed us, they've exposed us. Right? People that are super negative online, they were already thinking that stuff. Now they just get a safe, anonymous place to post it where they aren't going to get punched in the face for the things that they say. Right? And so I think this is a good thing. This is where I kind of dig accelerationism. Um, Accelerationism essentially is people that say, oh, the world is all going to hell in a handbasket. Let's make it worse. Because there's this concept of a discomfort threshold where, let's say, there's no discomfort down here, everything's totally good. And then this is the amount of discomfort required to make a change. And if you're right about here, like, you're very, very uncomfortable, but not enough where you're actually going to do anything about it. And so if you were more uncomfortable, you would actually be better off, because now you're over that threshold. You're like, no, 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 fuck this. I'm going to make a change. And now you get into a better situation and you're better off. So accelerationism is like, we're here. We don't like this. Let's make things worse so that we can get to here. And so that's where, yes, it really is that damn phone. But I find that when instead of like trying to discipline myself into not using it, because that never works, instead, if I allow myself to use it as much as I want, and eventually, I will have days where I'm using it way too much and I'm getting very negative effects from it, like cognitive effects, physical effects. Um, which, again, I'm not going to go into all that detail. There's plenty of other people that talk about that. The more you dive into the problem, the quicker you can find your way out of it. The only way out is through. And when I do that is when I get the best insights. It's when I get the most clarity. It's when I finally get those moments of like, nah, I'm done with this. I'm not doing this anymore. But then I do go back to it, and I keep having that experience over and over. And so it's like, how deeply addicted do I need to be in order to break out of the addiction? Or does it even work that way? I know it definitely doesn't work that way with physical, like with drugs. You can't like smoke a ton of meth to break your meth addiction. Well, actually, not with meth, but I have heard with cigarettes where someone had a problem with smoking cigarettes, and so their friend was like, "Here, have a cigarette," and then as soon as they finished it, like, "You know what? Here, have another," and they just kept going and going and going until this person was like throwing up, and that caused them to quit. Right? So you know what? Maybe there is something to that. I don't know. This is just a hypothesis of mine. When it comes to the phone addiction, that the more I dive into it, the more that gets me out of it and kind of cures me of it. That's been my hypothesis. But it's like, if I keep going back to it and keep restarting the addiction, is that really working? Because I have to find a way to break it. I can't just keep scrolling my life away. I scrolled away most of my teens and nearly all of my 20s, and I refuse to let it take over my 30s, which will be starting soon. So let me know what you think down below and question everything. Get off that damn phone. Go to bed.